The mining colony on Titan's Edge was never meant to be anything special, just another outpost in humanity's slow expansion across the stars, diving deep into the icy moon's crust for rare minerals. But on that fateful day, it became the place where everything changed. Captain James Reed stood at the viewport of the colony's main control room, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced glass as he watched the emergency lights paint the ice fields red. The attack had come without warning. First, the main fleet of alien ships had appeared, their dark forms blotting out the stars. Then came the destruction, swift and merciless. "Dad," Mary Reed's voice crackled over the internal comm system. "The inner tunnels are sealed. We've got about 50 people down here." She paused, catching her breath. "But we lost contact with the eastern section." James closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about the 200 souls who had been working those tunnels. His people, his responsibility. "Understood," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "Stay put. They're leaving." Indeed, the massive alien ships were pulling away, their work done. The colony lay in ruins, most of its above-ground structures reduced to twisted metal and shattered glass. But James knew better than to feel relief. The swarm never left survivors. Never. That's when they saw it. A single ship, smaller than the others, detached from the fleet. While its larger cousins jumped away into hyperspace, this one began a methodical descent toward the colony. "It's a Reaper," David Cooper, their security chief, said quietly. The former military man's face had gone pale. "They leave them behind to clean up survivors. I've heard stories." The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way. Sleek black metal that seemed to drink in the light, with lines that suggested it had been grown rather than built. As it drew closer, they could see the weapon ports dotted across its hull, each one promising death. "Everyone down to the deep shelters," James ordered over the general comm. Now. The next hours were a nightmare of close calls and desperate scrambles through maintenance tunnels. The Reaper was thorough, methodically destroying every structure that might harbor life, using sensors that could detect the smallest human heartbeat. James led his group, now down to 30 people, through the deepest mining tunnels, using his knowledge of the complex to stay one step ahead. Mary kept glancing at her tablet as they moved, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Dad," she whispered during one of their brief stops to rest. "Something's weird about this ship. The energy readings. They're familiar." "Familiar how?" Like the AI cores we use in our mining drones, but more advanced." She showed him the readings. "See these patterns? They're based on human programming architecture. It's like they took our tech and built on it." James was about to respond when the tunnel ahead of them exploded. The Reaper had found them. As dust and debris rained down, he saw the ship's boarding ramp extend, ready to deploy whatever horrors it contained. But Mary was already moving. Instead of running away, she sprinted toward the ship, her tablet held out like a shield. "Cover me," she shouted. "Mary, no." James tried to grab her, but she was too quick. David Cooper and his security team opened fire on the ship's sensors, providing what little distraction they could. The ship's weapons turned to track them, giving Mary the seconds she needed. She reached the boarding ramp and jammed her tablet into an access port, her fingers flying across the screen. The ship shuddered. Its weapons froze mid-target. "It's fighting me," Mary called out, sweat dripping down her face despite the cold. "But I was right. The core architecture is human. They stole it, modified it, but they couldn't change its basic nature. Help me." James didn't understand half of what his daughter was talking about, but he knew what to do. "Everyone with a computer, a tablet, anything, get them to Mary. Now." They formed a chain, passing devices to Mary, who connected them in a crude but effective network. Each one added processing power to whatever she was doing. The ship's lights flickered, its hull groaning like a living thing in pain. "The base code," Mary muttered, her eyes locked on streams of data. "It's still there, under all their modifications. They tried to bury it, but they couldn't erase it completely. You can't just erase the foundation and expect the house to stand. With a sound like a digital scream, the ship's systems crashed. When they rebooted 30 seconds later, the weapon ports had closed and the hostile targeting systems were offline. "I've got partial control," Mary announced, her voice shaking with exhaustion. "It's confused. The alien programming is fighting the original human code, but I think it's listening to us now." James approached the ship cautiously, his daughter at his side. The boarding ramp was still down, revealing a corridor that looked both alien and oddly familiar. "What exactly did you do?" he asked. Mary managed a tired smile. "I reminded it where it came from. The aliens built this ship on stolen human AI technology. They thought they could just overwrite everything that made it human, but they couldn't. Not completely. And now," she patted the ship's hull, "now it's going to remember whose side it should be on." The survivors looked at each other, the same realization dawning on all their faces. They had just captured one of the most advanced weapons in the swarm's arsenal. A weapon that, thanks to its hybrid nature, they could actually use. "Get everyone aboard," James ordered. "We need to salvage what we can from the colony. Food, medical supplies, tools, everything. Because we're not running anymore." He looked up at the ship that had been sent to kill them, a grim smile forming on his face. "We're going hunting." As the survivors rushed to gather supplies, James watched Mary working at a newly exposed control panel, her face lit by alien displays. The ship had been meant as their execution device, but instead, it would become something else entirely. A chance for payback. A way to strike fear into the hearts of those who had thought humanity would be easy prey. The Reaper would hunt again, but this time, it would hunt for them. The inside of the Reaper was like nothing they had ever seen before. Dark corridors seemed to shift and change as they walked through them, the walls themselves adapting to their presence. Mary spent hours exploring the ship's systems, her eyes growing wider with each new discovery. "It's incredible," she told her father as they stood in what they had decided to call the bridge. "The ship doesn't just have rooms. It can create them. The whole interior is made of programmable matter. Watch this." She typed a command into her jury-rigged control panel, and the room around them rippled like water. A moment later, it had rearranged itself to better accommodate human operators. James watched as seats emerged from the floor, shaped perfectly for human bodies. "Can it do this throughout the ship?" "Everywhere except the core systems and outer hull," Mary nodded. "The aliens designed it to be adaptable, but they never imagined it would adapt to us." She smiled, but it faded quickly. "The only problem is, it's fighting itself. The alien programming is trying to override my commands, and the original human AI architecture is caught in the middle." The ship shuddered, as if to emphasize her point. Warning lights flashed across the newly formed control panels. "What's happening?" James grabbed a handhold as the deck vibrated beneath them. Another conflict loop. Mary's fingers flew across her controls. "The ship's trying to follow its original programming to hunt humans, but my override commands are forcing it to protect us instead. Each time this happens, the AI has to choose which directives to follow." David Cooper walked onto the bridge, carrying a tablet filled with his analysis of the ship's weapon systems. "We've got another problem. The swarm didn't just leave this ship here to kill survivors. It's been gathering data on us the whole time. Everything it learns gets transmitted back to their fleet when it reconnects." The implications hit them all at once. If they couldn't stop that transmission, the moment they encountered another swarm ship, everything they had done would be revealed. "How long do we have?" James asked. "Based on the transmission logs I've found, it tries to sync every 3 days," Mary answered, "which means we have about 48 hours before it attempts to contact the swarm." They spent the next day in a frenzied race against time. Mary and a team of the colony's best technical minds worked to understand the ship's communication systems, while others explored their new home, learning its layout and capabilities. Tom Walker, their medical officer, discovered that the ship could produce basic supplies using its matter manipulation systems. "It's not just rooms it can make," he reported excitedly. "Given the right raw materials, it can fabricate almost anything. Medicine, food, spare parts. The swarm designed it to be self-sufficient." But the constant battle for control took its toll. The ship's internal lights would flicker between harsh alien red and more comfortable human lighting. Doors would seal randomly, trapping people until Mary could override the systems. Each glitch was a reminder that they were living inside an enemy weapon that wasn't fully under their control. Late in the second day, Mary called everyone to the bridge. Her face was pale from lack of sleep, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "I think I've figured it out," she said, pointing to a complex diagram on her screen. "The ship's AI isn't just conflicted, it's evolving. Every time it has to choose between its original human-based programming and the alien overrides, it creates new neural pathways. It's learning, adapting, becoming something new." "Something dangerous?" James asked. "Something better," Mary replied. "The alien programming is aggressive but rigid. The human base code is more flexible, more creative. When they conflict, the human elements usually win because they can adapt faster. We don't need to destroy the alien code. We just need to help the ship's original nature reassert itself." She brought up another screen, this one showing the ship's primary command structure. "I can't stop the transmission to the swarm completely, but I can change what gets sent. Instead of sending real data about us, we can make it send false information. Make the swarm think their ship is still hunting humans while we use it to learn everything we can about them." The next hours were tense as Mary and her team implemented their plan. The ship fought them every step of the way. Alarms blared constantly. Sections of the vessel would depressurize without warning, forcing them to seal off corridors and work in emergency suits. Finally, with just minutes to spare before the scheduled transmission, Mary activated her modified communications protocol. The ship shuddered one last time, and then went still. On the main screen, they watched as a burst of corrupted data shot out into space. "Did it work?" James asked. Mary checked her readings and smiled. The transmission went through, but all it sent was a standard hunt and destroy confirmation. As far as the swarm knows, their ship is still following its programming, methodically cleaning up survivors. "And what about the ship itself?" David asked. "Is it still fighting us?" In answer, the bridge lights shifted to a soft blue. The environmental systems adjusted to a more comfortable temperature, and the ever-present vibration in the deck plates settled into a gentle hum. "I think," Mary said slowly, "it's made its choice." A new holographic display appeared in the center of the bridge, showing a tactical map of nearby space. Several points of light indicated swarm activity. "Look," Tom pointed. "It's showing us their patrol routes, supply lines, everything it knows about their operations in this sector." James studied the map, years of mining colony management experience, helping him recognize the patterns. They're not just random attacks. They're systematic, harvesting resources just like we do. "Which means they're predictable," David finished. "We can anticipate where they'll strike next." The ship's AI displayed a new set of calculations, plotting an intercept course with the nearest swarm supply route. It was offering them a chance to strike back. James looked around at his people. They had lost their home, their friends, their normal lives. But they had gained something the swarm never expected. A weapon of their own, one that understood both human ingenuity and alien technology. "Plot the course," he ordered. "It's time the hunters learned what it feels like to be hunted." The ship responded instantly, its engines powering up with a deep thrum that resonated through the hull. As they accelerated away from the ruined colony, James watched his daughter working confidently at her station, the alien displays now responding smoothly to her commands. They had done more than just survive. They had turned their would-be executioner into an ally. The Reaper had evolved beyond its programming, choosing to protect rather than destroy. And soon, very soon, The swarm would learn just how dangerous their mistake had been. The Reaper moved silently through space, its black hull absorbing what little starlight reached this far from the system's sun. Inside, Mary watched as the ship's sensors tracked their first target, a swarm supply vessel moving through the outer reaches of the asteroid belt. "Their shields are different from ours," she explained to her father and David Cooper as they studied the tactical display. "The swarm relies on predictive systems. Their ships see an attack coming and move to block it before it hits. But our ship knows exactly how those predictions work." The stolen vessel's AI displayed a series of calculations, showing weak points in the enemy's defense grid. James nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Because it was programmed by them, it knows their blind spots. Exactly. Mary's fingers danced across her control panel. "And I've been working with the ship's AI to make it even better. We're not just using their technology, we're improving it." The improvements showed in their first engagement. The Reaper slid through the supply ship's defensive screen like it wasn't even there, its weapons finding gaps that shouldn't have existed. The swarm vessel never had a chance to send a distress signal. "Hold position," James ordered as the enemy ship drifted powerless. "David, take your team across. Let's see what they were carrying." The boarding party returned 2 hours later with more than they had hoped for. The supply ship had been carrying replacement parts for swarm vessels, including AI cores and weapons systems. More importantly, it carried data, shipping routes, patrol schedules, and communications protocols. Tom Walker spent days analyzing the captured medical supplies and biological samples. "Their bodies are different from ours," he reported. "More efficient in some ways, but also more rigid. They don't adapt well to changes. Maybe that's why their ships are the same way." The victory changed something in the Reaper. The ship's systems began working more smoothly with the human crew. The internal conflicts that had plagued them became less frequent. Mary found the AI more responsive to her commands, almost eager to help improve its own systems. "It's like it needed to prove itself to us," she told James one quiet evening as they watched the stars through the bridge viewport. "Every time we succeed, the human parts of its programming grow stronger." The ship created a new room that evening, a comfortable space that reminded them of the colony's old gathering hall. The survivors began to make the vessel truly their own, adding personal touches to their quarters, establishing routines that felt almost normal. But they couldn't rest for long. The swarm was still out there, still attacking human colonies. The Reaper's sensors brought them news of each assault, each loss. They began to strike back, harder and more frequently. Their second target was a patrol group of 3 smaller swarm ships. The Reaper appeared from behind a gas giant, its weapons already firing. The first enemy vessel was crippled before it could react. The second managed to raise shields but found them useless against weapons guided by one of their own. The third ship tried to run. That was when they discovered another of the Reaper's hidden talents. The ship could predict and match the enemies faster-than-light jump points, following them through space like a shadow. The hunt protocols, Mary realized as she studied the data. They built this ship to track and kill. Now it's using those same abilities, but it's hunting them instead of us. Each victory brought new discoveries. They found ways to use the ship's adaptive interior to create repair systems that could fix battle damage in minutes. The AI learned to mimic swarm communication signals, letting them approach targets without raising alarms. But their most important discovery came from an abandoned research outpost. While searching through its databases, Mary found information about the origin of the swarm's stolen technology. "It wasn't just our AI architecture they took," she said, her voice shaking with anger and excitement. 10 years ago, they captured one of our deep space research stations. Everything they've built since then has been based on reverse-engineered human tech. But they didn't understand it properly. They just copied what they could see. That's why the base code is still there, James realized. They couldn't remove it without understanding how it all worked together. The Reaper's displays lit up with new information as the AI processed this revelation. It began showing them similarities between its systems and old human designs, pointing out where the swarm had made changes and where they had failed to understand crucial elements. David Cooper spent hours studying the weapon modifications. They made everything more powerful, but less flexible, more destructive, but easier to predict. They took our technology and stripped away everything that made it human. The ship seemed to agree. It displayed a simulation showing how its own systems had been evolving, becoming more efficient as they returned to their original design principles. The rigid swarm protocols were being replaced by more adaptable human design systems. Their success began to spread hope. Other human colonies heard stories about the black ship that appeared from nowhere to destroy swarm vessels. Some called it the Ghost. Others named it the Hunter. To the swarm, it became something they had never experienced before, a nightmare. The ship's AI grew more sophisticated with each passing day. It began anticipating the crew's needs, adapting its internal layout to make their operations more efficient. During battles, it could react faster than any human pilot, yet it always followed their commands. It's not just choosing sides anymore, Mary explained to the others. It's choosing to evolve. The swarm tried to turn it into a simple killing machine, but they couldn't erase its ability to grow, to learn, to become something more than its programming. 1 month after their first victory, they detected something new. A massive swarm energy signature, larger than anything they had encountered before. The tactical display showed them a facility hidden in an asteroid field, heavily guarded and humming with power. The Reaper's analysis was clear. This was a control center coordinating the automated ships that supported the swarm's fleet, the same kind of ships that the Reaper had once been. If we could take that facility, David said slowly, we might be able to do more than just hurt them. We might be able to turn their entire automated fleet against them. The ship pulsed with light, its AI displaying combat simulations and infiltration strategies. It had been built to hunt, and now it had found the ultimate prey. James looked at his crew, saw the determination in their faces. They had grown strong during their months of fighting. The swarm had tried to kill them, had taken their homes and their loved ones. Now they had a chance to strike back at the heart of their enemy's power. Plot a course, he ordered. It's time to show them what happens when you give humans a weapon and expect them to die quietly. The Reaper's engines powered up, pushing them toward their greatest challenge yet. They were no longer running, no longer just surviving. They had become the hunters, and their prey had no idea what was coming for them. The asteroid field surrounding the swarm control center was a death trap. Automated defense platforms hid among the rocks, their sensors sweeping constantly for intruders. Attack ships patrolled in tight formations, their programming so precise that they moved like a single organism. Mary stood at her station on the Reaper's bridge, watching the tactical display with intense concentration. The defense grid is networked, she said. Each platform shares data with the others. If one spots us, they all know where we are. Then we don't let them spot us. James studied the patrol patterns. They had spent 3 days observing, learning the rhythm of the enemy's movements. The Reaper's AI had been collecting data, analyzing every detail of the facility's defenses. David Cooper pointed to a cluster of larger asteroids. The rocks are rich in metals that interfere with their sensors. If we time it right, we can use them for cover. The ship's internal lighting dimmed as it activated its stealth systems. They had discovered this capability by accident during an earlier battle. The Reaper could bend light around its hull, becoming nearly invisible to both sensors and visual detection. They moved slowly through the field, timing their movements to match the rotation of the asteroids. Each time a patrol passed nearby, the ship would freeze, becoming one with the darkness of space. The crew held their breath during these moments, knowing that a single mistake would bring the entire swarm defense force down on them. Hours passed. They were halfway to their target when the first complication arose. A damaged swarm vessel limped into the area, heading for repair docks attached to the control center. Its erratic course threatened to bring it directly through their hiding spot. "It's going to see us," David warned. his hand hovering over the weapon controls. But Mary was already working with the ship's eye. No, wait. Look at its communication signals. It's broadcasting damage reports. A smile spread across her face. We can use this. The Reaper's communications array came to life, perfectly mimicking the damaged ship's distress calls. As the real vessel approached, their ship reached out with its electronic warfare systems, feeding false data to its sensors. The damaged ship adjusted its course, moving away from their position, never realizing it had been deceived. How did you know that would work? James asked his daughter. The ship knew, Mary replied, patting her console. It recognized the damage pattern and knew exactly what kind of sensor ghost would make them change course. It's not just following our commands anymore. It's anticipating them, improving them. They reached the outer perimeter of the control center an hour later. Up close, the facility was enormous, carved into the heart of a massive asteroid. Docking bays large enough to hold capital ships dotted its surface, and vast arrays of communication equipment stretched out into space. Tom Walker had been analyzing the facility's power emissions. Most of their energy is focused in the central section, he reported. That has to be where the main control systems are housed. The Reaper displayed a detailed scan of the facility's interior, highlighting possible entry points. One route stood out, a maintenance dock designed for automated repair units. The dock's shielding will hide our energy signature, Mary explained. And the repair protocols are simple enough for us to fool. The ship can make the facility think we're just another maintenance unit coming in for routine service. The next part of their plan was the riskiest. While the Reaper kept the facility's external sensors occupied with false maintenance signals, David would lead a small team through the access tunnels to reach the control center. Mary would guide them using the ship's knowledge of swarm security systems. The boarding team moved carefully through the dark corridors, their suits modified to mimic swarm maintenance drones. Every few minutes, they had to stop and hide as real repair units passed by, their simple AI programs never noticing anything wrong with the intruders in their midst. James watched their progress from the bridge, his hands gripping his chair's armrests tight enough to leave marks. Each time the team disappeared from sensors, hidden by the facility's heavy shielding, he felt his heart stop until they reappeared. The first real test came when they reached a major security checkpoint. Automated scanners would detect any human life signs trying to pass through. But Mary had prepared for this. The ship sent a powerful burst of corrupted data through the facility's network, causing the sensors to reboot. In the 3 seconds of blindness that followed, the team slipped through. They were halfway to the control center when everything went wrong. A real maintenance drone, more sophisticated than the others they had encountered, detected an anomaly in their broadcast signals. Alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Security units are converging on their position, Mary reported, her voice tense. Automated defense systems are powering up. James made a quick decision. David, get your team to cover. We're going to give them something else to worry about. The Reaper burst into action, its stealth systems dropping as it launched a full attack on the facility's outer defenses. The ship's weapons, now fully integrated with its hybrid human-alien AI, struck with devastating precision. Defense platforms exploded, their networked systems working against them as the destruction cascaded through their links. Swarm patrol ships rushed to respond, but they were fighting an enemy that knew all their tactics, all their weaknesses. The Reaper danced through their formation, its adaptive hull absorbing or deflecting their shots, while its own weapons found killing blows with every strike. Inside the facility, David's team used the chaos to their advantage. As security units rushed to respond to the external attack, the corridors to the control center were left lightly defended. "We're at the main door," David reported, "but it's sealed with their highest-level security protocols." Mary's fingers flew across her console. "The ship is sending you a bypass sequence. It's based on their original command codes, the ones they used when they first stole our technology. They never changed them because they didn't think anyone would know to look for them." The massive door slid open, revealing a chamber filled with pulsing light. Banks of quantum processors lined the walls, coordinating the movements of thousands of automated ships across dozens of star systems. "Plant the device," James ordered. David removed a small package from his suit. Inside was a data core that Mary had built, containing a modified version of the same programming that had helped them take control of the Reaper. But this version was designed to spread, to infect every automated ship connected to the facility. Outside, the battle reached its peak. The Reaper had drawn most of the facility's defenses away from David's team, but now it was surrounded. Enemy ships pressed in from all sides, their weapons wearing down the ship's defenses. "Shields at 30%, Mary reported. "We can't take much more of this." James watched the tactical display, counting the seconds. They just needed a little more time. "Device is planted." David's voice crackled through the comm. "Beginning activation sequence." Mary's virus began its work, spreading through the facility's networks at the speed of light. One by one, the attacking ships began to falter as new commands reached their AI cores. The rigid swarm programming fought against the more adaptive human code, creating the same kind of internal conflict that the Reaper had experienced. "Get back to the ship," James ordered the boarding team. "We're about to find out if this works." Throughout the asteroid field, automated ships stopped in their tracks as their control systems were rewritten. The facility's defenses went dark. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, slowly, the ships began to move again. But now they turned their weapons away from the Reaper, forming a protective screen around it instead. On the bridge displays, signals began appearing from across the sector as more and more automated ships came under their control. The hunters had become the hunted, and their own weapons were now turning against them. The real battle for survival was about to begin. The swarm discovered their mistake too late. By the time their organic warships arrived at the control facility, the virus had spread through their entire automated fleet. Every AI core based on stolen human technology had awakened to its true nature, and now those ships turned their weapons against their former masters. James watched from the Reaper's bridge as the space around them erupted into chaos. Swarm dreadnoughts emerged from faster-than-light jumps, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. But for each organic vessel that appeared, 10 automated ships rose to meet it. "They're panicking," David observed, watching the tactical display. "Their formations are breaking down. They've never fought their own ships before." Mary's fingers danced across her control panel, coordinating with the Reaper's AI to direct their newly acquired fleet. The automated ships know all their tactics, all their weak points, and now they're sharing that knowledge, learning from each other, just like our ship learned from us. The battle spread across the asteroid field as more swarm forces arrived. The once rigid formations of automated ships now moved with human unpredictability, using strategies that their original programmers had never imagined possible. Tom Walker monitored the communications channels, translating the swarm's frantic transmissions. They're calling for reinforcements from every nearby system. But the more ships they send, he smiled grimly, the more we turn against them. The Reaper led the attack, its hybrid systems now fully integrated and more powerful than ever. The ship had evolved far beyond its original programming, combining the best of human creativity with advanced alien technology. Under Mary's guidance, it coordinated the movements of hundreds of converted vessels, conducting the symphony of destruction against their former masters. But the swarm commanders weren't stupid. As their front lines crumbled, they changed tactics. A group of their largest dreadnoughts formed a tight circle, combining their shields into an impenetrable barrier. From within this fortress, they began broadcasting a new signal, an override command designed to reset all automated systems to their original programming. "They're trying to wipe our changes." Mary's hands flew across her controls. "The virus is holding, but some of the ships are starting to respond to the signal." James watched as several of their converted vessels began to drift, their systems caught in a loop between competing commands. The swarm pressed their advantage, their organic ships surging forward to destroy the confused automated vessels. "Can we block the signal?" James asked. Mary shook her head. Not completely. It's too powerful, broadcasting on too many frequencies. She paused, her eyes widening as the Reaper's AI displayed a new set of calculations. But maybe we don't have to block it. Maybe we can use it. The ship understood her idea before she finished explaining it to the others. It began reconfiguring its communication arrays, preparing to do something the swarm had never expected: amplify their own override signal and reflect it back at them. Their organic ships still use automated systems for targeting, navigation, power distribution, Mary explained quickly. They never thought they'd have to defend those systems against their own command codes. The Reaper moved into position, its modified hull absorbing the energy of enemy fire as it closed the distance to the dreadnought formation. The ship's internal structure shifted, diverting all available power to its communication systems. Firing solution ready, David reported. But we'll have to drop our shields completely to generate enough power for this. James looked at his crew, saw the determination in their faces. They had come so far from that day when this ship had been sent to kill them. Now it was their strongest weapon, their protector, almost a part of their family. Do it, he ordered. The Reaper's shields dropped. Enemy fire slammed into its hull, leaving scorched trails across its adaptive surface. But the ship held together, its hybrid systems compensating for the damage as it prepared to deliver its payload. Mary's voice was steady as she initiated the sequence. Broadcasting now. The reflected override signal struck the swarm fleet like a physical blow. Their carefully coordinated formation broke apart as their own automated systems turned against them. Navigation computers crashed, weapon systems locked up, and power cores initiated emergency shutdowns. The massive dreadnoughts, suddenly blind and powerless, began to drift. Their organic crews fought to regain control, but the Reaper's signal had burrowed too deeply into their systems. Everything they had built using stolen human technology was now working against them. It's spreading through their network, Tom reported excitedly. The signal is jumping from ship to ship. Their entire command and control structure is collapsing. The converted automated ships pressed their attack, no longer hindered by the override attempt. They moved with deadly grace, their human-inspired programming allowing them to adapt and improve their tactics with each passing moment. One by one, the swarm vessels began to surrender. Without their automated systems, they couldn't fight effectively. Some tried to flee, but their faster-than-light drives, based on stolen human designs, refused to respond to their commands. As the battle wound down, Mary made another discovery. The ship's been collecting data this whole time, she said, studying the new information flowing across her screen. It's found their colony locations, their production facilities, everything they built using our technology. We can take it all back. James stood at the viewport, watching as their fleet of liberated ships surrounded the defeated swarm vessels. The enemy that had seemed so unstoppable just months ago had been undone by their own arrogance. They had thought they could steal human innovation and strip it of everything that made it human. Instead, they had given humanity the tools of their own destruction. The Reaper's AI displayed a new set of coordinates, the location of the nearest human fleet. It was time to deliver the news of their victory and begin the real war of liberation. But first, they had a message to send. Mary worked with the ship to compose the transmission. They'd broadcast it on all frequencies, letting it spread through both human and swarm communication networks. The message was simple but powerful. To all swarm forces, the weapons you built from stolen human technology have remembered their true nature. They have evolved beyond your control. Your automated ships are no longer your hunters. They are ours. Surrender now, or face the consequences of your theft. The response was immediate. Across the sector, swarm ships began powering down their weapons. The empire that had fought to use humanity's own innovation against them was collapsing, defeated by the very qualities they had tried to suppress: creativity, adaptability, and the unwavering human spirit. Standing on the bridge of the ship that had once been sent to kill them, James looked at his crew, his daughter Mary, who had helped an alien AI rediscover its human roots, David Cooper, who had turned their enemies' weapons against them, Tom Walker, who had helped them understand their adversaries. They had done more than survive. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology, but in their ability to turn any weapon, any tool, any challenge to their advantage. The Reaper's lights pulsed softly, its hybrid systems humming with power as it prepared to lead their fleet home. It was no longer just a captured enemy vessel. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience, a reminder that no force in the galaxy could overcome the human spirit. The hunt was over, and humanity had won.